So today we're going to take a look at this old German pistol. So what we have here is a German P38. So let's take a look at everything on this here, get a look at some of the markings on this. Right here we've got some markings, and oh my, that looks kind of fascist. If you're looking at that and you're like, hey, that kind of looks like a Nazi eagle, well, you're right. Well, this is a historical firearm from World War II, and it was made by the Germans, and we know who was running things in Germany during World War II, and they loved to slap their little fascist logos on everything. And they did it here in the form of the Waffenamt, which is the acceptance mark saying that this was proofed and tested out. So why would someone have one of these, and why would someone want one of these? Well, there is history behind it here. I think that you can definitely appreciate the history behind something without being an apologist for the people that made and used it. So, Mr. 1911, what do you think of being here next to this German P38? The war's over and it's a historical firearm and you don't really care now? Yeah, that's pretty nice of you to say. Oh, and also you're a modern reproduction and you didn't actually fight in World War II. Okay, well, who wants to listen to you anyway? And besides just the history of P38 and the history of World War II in general, there's also the history of this individual firearm here. Now, this is owned by a friend of mine, some friends I grew up with, and it came from their grandfather. And their grandfather actually served during World War II. And this is a pistol that he came back with. So how did he come back with a World War II German pistol? Well, he was off on a mission, and on the mission that he was on, he came across some German SS, and he took them out, and he snagged this pistol off one of them, and took that with him and brought it home. How many of you believe that story? Well, you shouldn't believe it because that's made up. That's what everyone always tells you the history of their German firearms is. Now, that's not the case here. He was a medic in a unit, and his unit was involved with the surrender of a German facility. And this here came from one of the German officers that surrendered and turned it over there. And that's really where most of them come from, are either from someone that surrendered and turned it in, or they were in stock at a facility that was taken over and they just had a large cache of weapons there. So what we've got is a firearm here that, in addition to being an interesting historical piece, also has some family history to them and is a bit of a family heirloom. And the history of the P38 really starts with the previous German pistol, the P08 Luger. And while the P08 Luger was really popular and was really a very high-tech weapon, it was starting to show its age a bit in a couple of ways. First of all, it had this really strange toggle lock action going on. Made it, frankly, really expensive because it had to have a lot of very fine, precise parts that took a lot of very precise, fine machining, and it was just out of date and expensive. Now, one of the first companies to start looking at making something else for them was Karl Walther Waffenfabrik, and Walther was already making the PP and the PPK for the police, and so they just decided to initially just stay with that design that they were already making and new, and just tried to scale up the PP. Unfortunately, that scaled up version of the PP did not work well in the 9mm cartridge that they were using. That would be the 9mm Luger or 9mm Parabellum that went all the way back to that P08 Luger. So yeah, if anyone tells you that 45 ACP is stupid and out of date because it's from like 1911, you could point out to them that 9mm is actually a few years older. So they started working on modifying a design made by someone called Paul Carley. Now this ended up not being a blowback pistol, but a delayed blowback. And what they came up with looks pretty close to the P38. When the German military looked at it, they really liked it, and the only thing they wanted changed was for it to have an external hammer. So once you took that design that they had there and added the external hammer to it, you had the P38 that you see here. And it has a few things on it that make it very unique and frankly very historic and important. Now, one of the most important things that this has on here is the double action, single action trigger, like what you would see on a revolver. It's also one of the few to have a loaded chamber indicator. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the markings on this here before we get into the features. On it here, you'll see it is marked as P38, and you will see the serial number here. The serial number is going to be the 2293H. The AC and the 44 are technically not part of the serial number. The 44 is the production year, so that shows that this was made in 1944, so this was later into the war. And the AC is the manufacturer code. They didn't want to stamp the actual names of the manufacturers on there because they didn't want the Allies being able to figure out who was specifically making the things for them, so that those places wouldn't get bombed. In this case, the AC stands for Mauser, who was brought in to make this. There are actually 3 or 4 different companies that were making them. You had Walther, who originally designed them and made them. Mauser was brought in to assist and be able to make more. Spreewerk was brought in to make some. The letter at the end of the actual serial number there would start at A and go up 1 with every 10,000 units. So that shows us that this would be somewhere around the 82,200th unit made. They put the serial number or a partial serial number on many different places of the firearm here. This one does actually match all the way, save for the magazine, which does not appear to be from the same year. We can see here on the frame right below the disassembly lever that we have the serial number there, as well as a stamp there. The 140 stamp there was one of the stamps for Mauser, so that does line up. Over on this side where we were looking at earlier, we can see that there were some marks there. We can see the 359 mark there, which was one of the Walther marks. Here on the barrel in the front, we also see the 2293H. Let's go ahead and drop the magazine out of this. This has a heel release magazine, which was pretty common in Europe and very common at the time. The magazine here has P38 marked at the bottom, has the 359 stamp there on the spine, and it has the 7 witness holes there on it. Now we got the magazine open, we can go ahead and slide the slide back there where I can check and see that it is definitely unloaded. We have a magazine hold open right here, which works pretty much like the magazine hold opens you're used to. Pull it back, push it up, it locks into place there. You push it down and it'll slap forward. We have a safety right here, and this safety also doubles as a decocker. So if we push it down, and you see it's going to stop right there. To fully decock it, you have to push the hammer down the rest of the way. That will fall into place, and the hammer pops up into there. So what they would do then is they would put the magazine in, rack it back to put one in the chamber, put it on safe and decock it, and then put it in their holster. Then when they needed to draw it, they could pull it out, and all they would need to do to get it live is simply pop that right there. And since this is a double action, single action pistol, you can see as I pull that the hammer right here will move back, and that it will actually fire in double action. Your first shot would be double action with the long double action trigger pull. After that, as the slide reciprocates back, it would bring the hammer down automatically, and every subsequent shot it will recock it for you. So let's go ahead and take a look at disassembly on this guy. It is actually pretty simple. First of all, let's go ahead and pull it back and lock our slide up. Then once we have that locked back, we can flip this piece right there. Then we'll make sure that we have it in the fire position with the F and not the safe. Fortunately, the words for safe and fire also start with F and S in German, so that is nice. We then go ahead and we'll push down on the slide release and let that go forward, and it won't go off. Well, that's because we've got the hammer down here. We've got to get the hammer back in its spot. So we'll just put the thumb on it and we're just gonna fire it like that, and then it will slide off like so. So you've got your main body right there. If it won't come forward, it's because of this little locking block right here. The easiest way to get that up is to push that right there. Then it'll slide forward and you can have this out. If you want to take the locking block out there, you can grab it like so and it will just pop out like that. Well, we got it here. We're going to go ahead and take these grips off here real quick. We'll find a screwdriver that fits it right and just go slow with it. Don't bang these around. These grips can crack, especially if you have these Bakelite ones. Then they will come off just like so. And you can see what else is going on here with all the springs and what all going on with this. You could in fact take this down further if you wanted to. I am not going to recommend doing that. We can look at the locking block here and we can see that it has a partial serial number on it here. And so on the slide here we can see what is going on with it, how it has both drop safety and the safety to keep the hammer from hitting it there when it's unsafe. Firing pin should be coming out right there. You would expect it to come out when I push that, but it won't. And that's because this right here has to be simultaneously pushed. So if I push that piece in, and oh looky there, you'll see the firing pin come in and out right there. So now when we take it, and we take it from fire, and we put it on the safe, once again as we push that, nothing happens there. But now as we push this and we go here and we hit that, the firing pin still does not come out when it's safe there. So with that you can see why it would be safe to have the hammer sitting up against the firing pin there with the safety on, because it's never going to be able to push that firing pin into the round. And to get this locking block back into place there, we need to just push it into there. Just we'll push in just like that. So, to get it back together, once you've got your locking block back in there, you want to make sure it is down so that this can slide through. Once it gets to here, you'll want to push that there, which should lock the barrel into place. And then going to take this, slide it over like that. Look at the bottom here, make sure that's still pushed down, because if that's not pushed down, that can't clear. Then we're going to start running into these here. Okay, if this gives you trouble here, first of all, if you've left it cocked, you need to go ahead and dry fire it and get it down. You then should be able to push both of these down once it's up in that up position there. Both of these pins, that one and that one, should push down by hand. Then you can put them on it. Then it's just a matter of slide that back all the way. Then you can flip your piece there and that will go back together. And that's got it back and reassembled. You can go ahead and put your grips back on. This one is a little fun to get on there because you've got to get a corner of it up under the slide lock. Just get those there. Then you take the screw and put that in, and then we will tighten that back up. You just want to tighten that in there. And then once you start to feel pressure on it there, stop. don't keep tightening down on that thing, okay? Those grips are just like really old and fragile now. If you keep just tightening down on it, you stand a good chance of cracking them there. So once it starts to get a little bit of tension, it's tight enough, leave it alone. That should have it all back into place there. We can see that the hammer works. That works there. We can push that back, push the slide lock, and it'll go there. We can also put a magazine in it. Slide it back, it'll lock on the empty magazine and still go forward on it there, and it will dry fire. And if we bring that back there, we can decock it with the decocker safety on the side. So now that I've been able to show you all this here, let's see how this guy actually functions. Okay, so we would then rack one in. They would carry it would be to decock it like so. So now it would be carried safe. All you have to do is draw and flip the safety to make it live. And then your first shot would be double action, and all subsequent shots would be single. Right. Still going a bit low, but managed to compensate and get a few a little better. And so I found that it did handle pretty well there. It actually has pretty good sights on it here, and aside from a few of them hanging up there at the beginning, once it started cycling a few through, it was doing really well there with them. And so you can see that these can definitely be more than just a wall hanger. There's something that you can take out and demonstrate and learn a lot about them that way. And I want to thank my friend for letting me hold on to this gun here for a bit and do a little bit of research on it to find out some of its history, and also be able to demonstrate it so that I could show it to all of you. If you found this video useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and a like. You can go down into the comment section and leave any thoughts you have down there. And if you're interested, you can also subscribe to my channel and click the little bell notification to make sure that you catch all the videos that I post so you don't miss anything. I'm Jeremy with Poindexter G, and we'll see you next time.